Now, we don't just talk about chemistry and go to cold, high places. We go to some places that are pretty low, pretty hot, and pretty humid. We did an expedition to the Amazon jungle with 4 youth ambassadors. They trekked right to the center. You took your finger and put it, boom, in Brazil, in the center of the Amazon. That's where they trekked, and they learned about biodiversity from the indigenous people that live in the Amazon. Who better to know about biodiversity? But they also learned incredible and extraordinary things about themselves, living in the jungle and trekking in the jungle. Ambassadors come from everywhere. It's an international team. That video was a gal, Jessie, from Edson, Alberta, a small town in Alberta, and beside her was this gal, Sierra, from Arizona. And they ended up becoming the best of friends while they were out there. Now it's interesting, after that video was shot, Jessie pulled 16 ticks, which are like tiny spiders. I don't know if there's ticks in Utah, but if she pulled them out of her, they were all embedded in her skin, but she didn't care. She was there for the adventure, and she was pushing herself, and she was challenging herself. And my first point that I want to make is that we all have an adventure in every single one of us. It doesn't mean that you got to run 1,000 miles across the Amazon jungle. It means you take a challenge and you push yourself. And I'll bet you everybody in this room on one day or another has challenged themselves, pushed themselves, whether it's creatively, academically, or in sports. It can be anything. But in every one of us is that capacity to rise to the occasion and be extraordinary. And they proved it. Not just the jungles, though, and the deserts. The deserts. We've been to many diverse places. As I said, we got this high altitude desert, and we got the jungle. But talk about even lower in altitude and even hotter, Tunisia. 4 youth ambassadors running an average gain of a marathon per day as they made their way across southern Tunisia, learning about water in Africa, but also learning about how precious water is to the human body. This is a photograph of Jill Gilday, one of our youth ambassadors. She was one of the only elite athletes. See, typically in our expeditions, these are regular 17, 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are applying for these expeditions. They're provided with all of the training and programming they need to prepare their bodies to do something like this. While they train and prepare, they share the stories of how dedicated they are to what they're trying to accomplish on a live website that we create, telling the stories so that other young people can learn from that and be inspired by it. But Jill came into this expedition a super athlete, but she had the hardest time. There's always a story, right? We're actually all equal and capable of being extraordinary. You don't have to be an elite athlete to feel how hard it can be when it's hot out and you're really thirsty. So we communicate every day. We're on an expedition. Our youth ambassadors are communicating with students just like you guys through this live web portal, this satellite that allows us to be on high-speed internet. And they're learning not only the students in the classrooms, their extended teammates, about how Jill and her team have been running a marathon day, but also what they learned about water. 95% of the world doesn't have access to clean drinking water. That was a big fact for them to learn while they were out there. So they challenged students in classrooms and they said, you know what? We're doing something amazing. We're doing something extraordinary. And we've been empowered. We want you guys to be too. So we challenge you to come up with your own ways, become quote-unquote social entrepreneurs, devise ways to raise enough money to build 2 water projects in Africa. This is the coolest thing. From elementary school through to middle school, right on up to high school. Organized bake sales and organized running races. Youth gathered together to show the power of what you guys can do. Because in this room, of course, are future presidents, right? Future business leaders. It's amazing what you can do. Collectively, all of these youth from across America and Canada and other countries raised enough money to successfully build 2 water projects in Africa. The power of youth. It's in your hands, right? Now, for me, I learned all of these things much later. I wish I knew a lot of this stuff when I was your age, or the age of our youth ambassadors, or our teammates in the schools. But in fact, for me, my greatest lesson would come in Africa. Do you want to see another video? Check it out.
most unforgiving place on Earth. Over 3.5 million square miles. A vast wilderness. It is the Sahara Desert, with people and cultures as unpredictable as the landscape.
Running 50 miles a day, it's the challenge, it's going the distance, it's just pushing myself to my limits.
It's never been done. No one's ever run that far in that period of time.
That will be tough. It's a mental thing, I think.
Imagine running 50 miles per day for more than 100 days in an unprecedented personal challenge. 3 ultra runners, good friends, test physical strength and mental toughness, running across the entire Sahara Desert.
They're such high-end athletes. They're used to pushing themselves. They're going to be pushing their bodies more than they ever have in the past.
We've had injury, we've had sickness.
The best thing to do would be to stop for the day, but we have to cover some miles today.
Any Americans found out without wrong paperwork are considered spies, liable to execution.
We're going to have to make the best decision for us as a team.
It's so difficult for me because the personalities are so different.
I don't want to push us into the ground, obviously. Well, push us down close.
This is, a lot tougher than you really thought.
You can do this. You don't want to quit.
We saw a young boy, 7 or 8 years old, in the desert alone, fending for himself while his dad was 2 days walk away to get water. That's the water situation. I mean, it's so much bigger an issue than I would have ever thought.
Narrated by executive producer Matt Damon and directed by James Mall, a personal and compelling journey into the world's most mysterious wilderness.
The purpose of the 3 of us coming here was to learn more about each other, to learn about the people of the Sahara, and to do something that hasn't been done before.
They all 3 agreed that if one runner went down, they would be out of the expedition.
I thought the commitment was different than that. When is the end? The end is when we get to Cairo. It will be a life-changing experience, and not just for the 3 runners, for everybody who's along on this journey.
So on November 1st, 2006, my 2 buddies and I set out to do something that everybody said was impossible. We ran across the entire Sahara Desert through Africa, from the west coast to the east coast. It took us 111 days to run 4,500 miles. If you do the math, it's roughly 40 miles per day. Every day without a single day of rest. Probably the most difficult part of the expedition was the fact that we had 2 showers the entire time we were out there. So you can imagine how difficult that would be and how stinky you'd be by the end, right? But sandstorms, let me tell you something, you can't see anything, and typically your crew can't see you coming to them, but they can smell you, so you're not going to get lost, right? That's what it was. But 111 days spent running across the Sahara Desert, that's a long time. If you think about what you were doing almost 4 months ago, and to be spending that every single day, not only, running through sand dunes, which sometimes we would be thousands of miles without seeing anything, any people, just one sand dune after another, just like the sand dunes that we ran through the other day outside of town. But keep on going, keep on trucking. Occasionally you get on top of the sand dune, and from a distance you could see a pile of white. And upon closer inspection, when you ran up there, you saw, oh my gosh, it's human bones. This place is a really dangerous place. You can only last a few hours without water in a place like this. It really dawned on us how important and precious a resource clean drinking water was. 111 days after we started this running expedition, we finished running the Sahara, and we learned about something so significant affecting the people of North Africa, this lack of access to a resource that myself as a Canadian, Bob as an American, we have plentiful access to. And I thought about it when we got there, because the reasons we started running across the Sahara Desert were completely different than they were in the end. If I was to be honest and tell you, I would say that when I started running the Sahara, my goal with my 2 teammates was to be the first to run across Africa. But after everything that we learned, and the Tuareg, the nomads of the Sahara that became our friends, that taught us about the situation in Northern Africa. By the time I got to the end, it was a completely different story. I wanted to share what it was that we'd learned about ourselves. But I think the most important thing that I learned, when our hand was above the water at the Red Sea, 3 of us, 1, 2, 3, I looked at our 3 hands and I thought, wow, our hands look the same. And that sort of sounds like a silly thing to say, but consider this. My 2 teammates were lifelong elite athlete runners. I was almost 40 years of age when I reached the Red Sea, and I had only been running for about 3 years. And just a few years before that, I was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. I was a smoker, and I was doing all these unhealthy things and unhealthy choices. And at that time, when I was living very unhealthy, I realized that I was also unhealthy inside. And when I decided that I was going to change my life, I was going to make a decision, I was going to take a risk to follow in the footsteps of my younger brother John, who was this great athlete, I had nothing to lose in my mind, is what I said. Lo and behold, I decide that I'm going to change the way I live, change the way I treat my body. 7 years later, I run across the Sahara Desert, my hand plunges into the water, and 2 words come to my mind. No limits. My wife, Kathy, had joined the end of the expedition, and she ran down to the water, and she said, "What's the first thing you thought of when you finished this?" I said, "No limits." She said, "What, do you think that means you?" I said, "You know what, babe? It means every single one of us, every human being, every person in this room. That there are no limits to what we can achieve. If 7 years before this day I was smoking a pack of cigarettes every single day, yet through these decisions that I made, if you told me 7 years ago I was going to be doing this, I'd say, no way, you got the wrong guy." But it proved to me that as human beings, we totally underestimate what we're capable of. And what was it that gave me this gift? Running. I made a decision. I discovered running. I started running, and it taught me all these amazing things that we can do. Now I go on expeditions with people, young people all over the world, Bob and I infer. And we get to see these young people learn the same things about themselves that I learned in running the Sahara, essentially recreating that. Knowing that at 16 and 17 and 18 and the students in the classrooms that are following along that are 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, that you don't have to wait until you're 40 to figure out that you're extraordinary. With the Grand Ultra, the hope here, of course, is that many people will come to Utah and Kanab and visit this beautiful place and make all the great friends that we've made and continue to come back. But also, beyond learning about what a beautiful and majestic wilderness it is here, we want people to discover in themselves how they can be extraordinary. How everyone can be freed from all boundaries. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.